Virtualization is one of the greatest benefits to the data center. It removes the old ways of having to do things where we would stack and rack all of these servers that were consuming so much power, all of the cable management, and a lot of the times those servers were just totally underutilized, and there was nothing I could do about shifting that hardware around to servers that were being overwhelmed with usage. Now with virtualization, well, we can resource manage. We can better control the use of these resources, reducing things like the cable management and all of the racks. It may seem trivial, but the power reduction alone is a cost savings. Virtualization, yeah, it's the benefit to the data center. And what better place to start than in this module, creating and configuring virtual machine settings, where we'll start at the beginning of getting Hyper-V set up and creating our first VMs and some of the different settings that will allow us to resource manage these VMs on our host. In fact, here's what we're going to do. Creating a virtual machine is not a complicated process. In fact, we'll make one fairly quickly as we go through. But we have different types of virtual machines. We want to make sure that we get the uses of them clearly between Generation 1 and Generation 2 virtual machines. Just because you have Gen 2 doesn't mean that's always going to be the right answer. Now, one of the benefits to having virtual machines and being able to have better management is better resource management. And we want to look at ways to utilize memory better for our virtual machines. It's so common that a virtual machine wasn't working hard, didn't need all of the memory that it had installed, but I had another physical machine that was so overwhelmed. Now that we have them virtualized, we can let them share that memory usage. And there are some features that are going to help us with this, because when we start sharing that memory usage, we could run into some bottleneck areas. And so we're going to look at a feature called smart paging that'll help us avoid some of that. Now, out of all of this, when you're trying to manage these resources, getting information about how those VMs are operating, how do you set the correct numbers for dynamic memory? Well, that's going to come from our resource metering. This is something in Server 2012 R2 that we can turn on through PowerShell, and we can look at the virtual machines to see how they're using their resources. You'll notice that when we set up our virtual machines, it's a pretty easy process, and the operating systems in the virtual machines just works. Well, we can enhance how that operating system works with the guest integration services. This will give us better drivers for our peripherals, not just our keyboard and our mouse, but also our storage as well, which could help improve performance. And we want to give you a couple of additional options that if you're looking at something like a virtual desktop infrastructure, VDI, for instance, some features you may need where you can redirect local resources through an RDP session, remote desktop protocol session, and the ability to use real high-end graphics through virtual machines without taxing the CPU very much. It's going to require some additional hardware, a graphics processing unit, but we can use Remote FX for those graphics-heavy applications. So what do you say we get started with creating and configuring our very first virtual machines?